When a man says a woman ajusta an option, is behavior may look charming at first glance, emit fleet occasional text or drop compliments. Bukunderneat, the energy is inconsistent, there is no real depth. Y se forzare minimal, strategically placet que tep connection alive, juste not to satisfy segoris temporarines. You might find yourself overanalyzing messages, questioning why a didn't call back, or wondering if you're reading too much into small gestures. That confusion isn't accidental, it stems from a lack of clear investment on his part, say. When a man is uncertain about you, or doesn't truly value the connection, his energy reflects that uncertainty. E becomes a master of convenience. El reach out when es vore lonely or seeking validation, but disappear justas kiklo en somen or someone. El segras his attention. E ma que sure you're not too close to walk away, but never close enough to truly feel secure. And this inconsistency is the first major indicator of OSS you. If a man is otoneda en call the next, his presence fe flique a reward you ave to earn instead of submitting freely given, you relikely being kept as an option. On the other hand, when a man says a woman astione, y sentire energy shits, it doesn't just maketime, it wants to maketime, it doesn't leave you guessing. Because clarity is why you're showing that evaluates you. It's not playing games or following arbitrary dating rules. It takes because it wants to hear from you. Not because it's been traded and efleke es schuld. His investment isn't measured or manipulated. It's natural, consistent, and driven by genuine interest. And this consistency isn't just about frequency, it's about present when you're in a conversation, es actuar tu ayudere, listening, engaging, and making you feel like what you say matters, and remember small things you told him days or weeks ago. E for you something that matter to you. It shows interest in your world, because it's not just focused on how you make him feel. It's interested in how you feel too. That's the emotional investment that separates a man who says you as an option from one who says you as tione, men, just like a woman, have a limited amount of emotional energy to give. And where they chose to place that energy is rarely accidental. When a man finds someone truly says potential with, his investment becomes strategy, but not in a manipulative way, is building something and no si takes effort, that effort makes show up in small ways. A check-in call during a busy day, an offer mappe something you mentioned struggling with, or simply remembering that your big meeting was on Thursday. Desear en gran romantic gestures their investments, and they matter more than words ever could. Contrasta with a man who keeps you on the sidelines. He doesn't go out of his way for you, not because it's evil or heartless, but because he doesn't have it all. You're still responding, you're still available. You're still giving more than he gives back. And as long as that dynamic remains unbalanced, he has no reason to change it. And no se can put in 40 effort and still get of your attention. That's no love, it's emotional convenience. You bebe come a placeholder for something better in his mind, even if he doesn't consciously realize it. And this is where so many people get stuck, waiting for someone to finally choose them. But someone who truly values you doesn't need convincing. It does need months of indecision or a series of dramatic turning points. When a man says you as teone, it doesn't sit on the fence, it moves forward with intention. It takes the risk. It chooses you, not because it's sure of the outcome, but because it knows the connection is worth the effort, even if it's caressing. There is a difference when pursuit and pressure. A man who values you doesn't pressure you, but it does pursue you consistently, respectfully, and with care. It doesn't disappear after a deep conversation or go silent or awaken together. It follows through, not just with words, but with action. And when things get tough, as they inevitably do, alliancing instead of checking out. That's how you know his energy is built on something real, not just momentary attraction or emotional boredom. It's not about how romantic is on your best days. It's how present is on the aberraciones when you retion, it doesn't ration his presences. It doesn't weaponize silence. It doesn't make you feel like you're chasing him. Instead, there is a sense of emotional fit you feel seen. You feel chosen. Not because it is you feel it in the way it shows up, day in and day out. And if you've been on the receiving end of inconsistent energy, you know exactly how exhausting it is. You find yourself stuck in a loop of hope and doubt, clinging to moments of attention like a proof that something real exists, but depth don't. You know love shouldn't feel like a guessing game. You shouldn't be constantly decoding messaging now or wondering if today's the day finally shows up emotionally. You can serve better than that. Eres the truth consistency isn't boring. It's the foundation love. It te pro someonis in noes in not just in the idea of you, but in building something with you. When a man says you as the on, it treats you like someone irreplaceable, not perfect. Not flawless, but someone who matters enough to show up for. It says your value clearly and his energy honors that, not just once but consistently. You don't have to be for clarity when someone truly values you. You don't have to explain your word to someone who already says. And you don't have to settle for being an option in someone's life when you were born to be the only choice in the realm. What you accept teaches others auto-treat you. So when you notice a man's energy is inconsistent, don't try harder. Observe. Let his energy show you where you stand in his life, and if it tells you that you're just an option, trust it enough to walk away, because the one who says your word will never make you question it. Communication is often the clearest window into someone's emotional intentions. When a man views a woman as merely an option, his communication is transactional, inconsistent, and often shallow. It's not that he doesn't know how to communicate, but the depth of what he shares and how often he reacts so directly mirrors how much emotional investment is meant to give. Conversations become tools to maintain access, not will connection. Emit test you late at need, respond in short messages, or send a meme instead of asking about your day. The content feels casual and disjointed, leaving you feeling more confused and connected. When you're an option, you'll often find yourself doing most of the emotional labor. You're the one initiating checking in, trying to keep the conversation alive. You might notice engaged on when it benefits him, maybe when it's bored, lonely, or physically interested. And if it does open up occasionally, it's often vague or surface level, enough to give the illusion of intimacy, but not enough to create a real emotional depth. You can talk for hours, but still feel like you don't actually know him. And more importantly, it doesn't feel like he wants to truly know you. But the dynamic changes completely when a man says you as the one. His communication is more open, vulnerable, and consistent, not because he's trying to impress you, but because he wants to come with you. He's not afraid of silence the between messages with us leave you in it for too long. E dos sympathizes like nothing happened. When es investe emotion you'll feel it in the tone and frequency of face communication. His words won't just be reactions, they be invitations into his world. Your notice start sharing more than just facts or updates. It talks about his past, his fears, his hopes, his frustrations, e becomes emotionally transparent. Not perfect but open, and in return, it makes space for you to do the same. It's no longer about quick replies or clever banter. It's about emotional safety. You feel comfortable being like yourself to connect the cause connecting with mutual interest. Not performance. When you're the one, it communicates even when it is not easy. It doesn't disappear during tough moments or avoid serious conversations. It doesn't dodge responsibility or either in vague answers. Instead, it leans in, it extends. It apologizes when necessary. It tells the truth even when it's uncomfortable, because it respects you enough to be real with you. That honesty builds trust, and trust builds love. There is also emotional availability in all his text. It pays attention, it remembers small details, has thoughtful follow up questions, and shows genuine interest in your inner world. It's not just waiting for his turn to speak. It's present. This kind of presence is rare when someone says you as just an option, because being truly present requires a level of emotional vulnerability that only comes when someone is genuinely invested. It's also important to recognize that communication doesn't always mean long, dramatic conversations. Sometimes it's the simple things, sending a good morning text, checking when your revigatos die, or remembering something you mentioned weeks ago. These moments might seem small, but they carry a powerful message you matter. Ese yo, y care. In the end, a man communicates with you says everything about where you stand in his heart. If evaluates you and make you guess, you won't have to decode his words or chase his attention. When you're te one con communication becomes the bridge that brings you closer, not the barrier that leaves you confused. One of the most telling scenes of how a man views a woman lies in no attacks about the future. When a man says a woman as just an option, his language around the future is vague, non-committal or entirely absent. E avois making solid plans, especially honesta extent be honeste feodais or weeks if edos tak about the future. Me? So meves. An, se. Is not that the doesn't have a future in mind, e just doesn't say you in it with any certainty. That lack of clarity often leaves you feeling insecure, questioning whether the relationship is progressing or if it's even real at all. A man who keeps you an option avoids future, oriented discussions because making plans requires emotional responsibility. It forces him to put something on the line. His time, his energy, and most importantly, his intentions. And if his goal is to keep things light, casual or undefined future tag become straight, so es the steps it. Emit change de subject when things get serious, la of an invention of commitment, or use phrases like le te just enjoy the momento donde per conversations. You might find yourself wondering how long it's supposed to take for someone to be sure about you. But deep down you already know, if I wanted to include you in his life I would. In contrast, when Anne see you on, it talks about the future naturally, not as a tactic, but as a reflection of how it feels. It begins to make space you in his world, not just in the present moment, but in what's to come. That space could be as simple as inviting you to an event happening next month, asking your thoughts on moving cities, or imagining what life meet like you two a trip together. These conversations are not necessarily grand commitments, but they reveal something crucial. Es mental and emotional, including you in the direction his life is heading. This kind of forward-thinking language is not forced. It happens organically cause when someone is emotionally invested, their thoughts start to include the person they care about. They don't think in isolation. Their decisions start to carry mutual weight if it's considering taking a new job and wants to know it means your relationship. If affect planning is there, I wonder where you'll fit into it. This inclusion is subtle but powerful. It shows someone shoster not just dating for the moment, but building someone's lasting. Another key difference lies in how it reacts when you bring out the future. A man who says you astione doesn't panic when you tackle your logoter goals, timelines, or expectations. It might not all the answers, but engages with the conversation. It respects your vision and makes an effort to understand how his own goals align with yours. You don't feel like you're pushing too hard or being too much. You feel like your desires are valid and safe to express when you're just an option. Future tak feel like walking eggshells. You all back your dreams, your hopes, and your ultimately because you're afraid of carrying off. But when you're at the on, it feels different. It feels like two people looking in the same direction, figuring things out together. Everything isn't set in stone. Ultimately, the way a man talks or doesn't talk about the future is a direct reflection of how it says you fitting into it. If you avoid the topic altogether, it's likely avoiding making you a priority. But when it starts including you in his plans, both big and small, it's showing you in the clearest way possible. You're not just a moment in his life. You're becoming a part of the story he wants to write. When a man views a woman as just an option, one of the most obvious scenes is so endless her boundaries, and might not openly disrespect them in dramatic ways, but will subtly challenge them, push against them, or ignore them when become inconvenient for him. This isn't always done out of malice. It often stems from a meanness, time and emotions are simply not prioritized. When you're just an option, your comfort is secondary to his preferences. Your no becomes negotiable. Your team becomes flexible only when it works for him, expects leniency, understanding, and patience from you, but rarely offers the same in return. In this dynamic, a man might show frustration when you enforce your limits. If you say you're not available, a mild trip you're making you feel bad for not making him a priority. If you express discomfort with certain behaviors, it might tell you you're overreacting or being too sensitive. Over time, this wears down your sense of self-worth. You begin to second-guess your standards, you start shrinking your net just to maintain the connection. That is a dangerous path to live in, and it almost always happens when you're not truly being valued. Boundaries about saying no, they're about self-respect, they're about emotional safety. And the man who says you as he only understands this. It doesn't try to mold you into someone who fits his convenience. Instead, honors the lines you draw, even when they don't align with his preferences, and knows that respecting your boundaries isn't a sign of weakness or passivity. It's a sign of emotional maturity and deep respect. When a man is truly invested in you, a doesn't who's listening when you speak about your needs, a response to that who's learns and grows. You don't have to keep explaining the same thing over and over again. You don't have to fit to be hard. Your feelings are escenas obstacles. They're evaluated as part of the relationship's growth. In this space, you feel emotionally safe, you don't walk on eggshells. You don't fear abandonment every time you stand up for yourself because his presence retains something real. It doesn't care si your boundary has traits. It says them as expressions of who you are. The difference is subtle but profound. A man who says you as an homme meant iniziare supportive, but the moment your boundaries require him to shift his habits or reconsider his choices, the support begins to fade. Suddenly, your needs become too much. He labels you as needy, controlling, or dramatic. He wants the perks of intimacy without the responsibility that comes with it. In other words, he wants access without accountability. But a man who says you as teone understands that accountability is part of intimacy. He wants to know whether your limits are because to protect them, not test them. He don't just say the right things, he proves it through his actions. He doesn't flirt with disrespect. He doesn't use a charm to bypass your comfort. Instead, he chooses to show up in a way that aligns with your values. And perhaps most importantly, when you do enforce a boundary, it doesn't make him. It doesn't spiral into defensiveness or victim mode. It doesn't try to flip script to make you feel guilty. È che accessi qui grasse, even if it stings a little. That's the mark of someone who is emotionally mature and secure to untold pass for another person's truth. In relationships where you are truly valued, boundaries become a bridge, not a wall. They depend truth rather than create a distance. You begin to feel safe expressing your full self because you know you won't be punished for doing so, and that safety creates the kind of bond that will something lasting. You can be honest, you can be vulnerable. You can say no without fearing rejection, and yes without fearing regret. Over time, this mutual respect for boundaries fosters a powerful wind of intimacy, on a where both people feel seen, heard, and protected. And it's only in this kind of dynamic that love has the space to truly grow. Not the kind of love that's based on excitement or chemistry alone, but the kind that's rooted in trust, safety, and real emotional connection. So if you find yourself constantly compromising your boundaries, constantly explaining yourself, or constantly being mad to feel guilty for having standards, that's management. And love shouldn't have to be managed, it should be felt. It should feel like a place you can excel, not a test you keep failing. A man who says you as, "Tio never put your possession where your boundaries feel like a burden. He'll say them as an invite to love you better. And in return, you'll feel a kind of peace that only comes you evaluate not who's desired, because the desire fades. But respect that's what lasts.